Okay, ready for me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kristen, and good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Jill Huerta, and I am Executive Director of the Center for Graduate Life and Learning on campus here at UNC, here at Charlotte. Just learning the new branding still. I've been here for about 4.5 years, and I'll explain what the Center for Graduate Life and Learning is as we go along. But I've been here for about 4.5 years. And before this, I was Associate Director of Admissions at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. So I did recruiting and admission for full-time MBA students at a top MBA program. So that's where some of the expertise that I'll be sharing with you today comes. The rest comes from just, a couple decades of working in higher education and working with graduate students in particular. So before I jump in and start my presentation, can you give me an idea of who is in the room? And I guess if everyone isn't going to have cameras on, we can do this through the chat. Are you all, how many people are seniors? Junior, or yeah, you could just chat in your class level. That's a good idea. Senior and early entry grad. I love that. Sophomore, junior. Okay. So there's a real mix here. I assume you all have at least a curiosity about graduate school, if not an intention to apply at this point. Can you give me an idea whether you're thinking about a master's program or a doctoral program? PhD, Masters of Social Work, PhD, higher ed, awesome. Whoever that is should talk to me after this. Mechanical engineering, public health, data science. Okay, so also a bit of a mix. Excellent. Well, and you all know, I can assume you know the difference, right, between a master's program, a professional master's program, and a doctoral program. Is that right, Kristen? Is that a fair assumption?
I would think so.
Okay. So I'm going to share my presentation, and you will see as I go through that. Are you all seeing my presentation? Good. You'll see as I go through that I am not a huge put a lot of words on a PowerPoint slide or a Google slide kind of person. So I just kind of use them to have something in the background while I'm talking. But it's great to be here today, and I would congratulate all of you because you're already working on graduate school, in some cases fairly early in your undergraduate careers. And I think that is a wonderful thing that's going to put you ahead of a lot of other people who kind of go through their undergrad and never explore graduate school until they finish, and then have to scramble to think about what they want to do, how to prepare, how to get it all together. So it's a great step that you're part of this program, that you're doing research that you'll be able to refer to in the future, and that you're doing this exploration now. So good job for that. And in fact, it feeds into my first point about being competitive when applying to graduate school, which is you need to know your path. Now, by that, do I mean you need to know when you're 50 exactly what job you're going to be doing and exactly what the path is to get there? No. Absolutely not, right? I would completely stress you guys out if I said you should know that, and you couldn't know that, right? We just, especially now when the labor market changes very, very often. I was at a conference in San Francisco in December, the Council of Graduate Schools conference, where they had someone from the Burning Glass Institute, which is sort of an educational research data analytics firm, speaking with us and saying that the skills needed in most positions in the job market are completely turning over every 5 years right now. I think he was probably a little more tech-centered than other fields, but I think the point is true that skills needed in the workplace are changing rapidly, and most of you are probably going to change career paths at least once, if not a couple times in your lives. So just to punctuate the fact that you don't know exactly where you're going to be when you're 50 or 60 or 30, really, at this point in your lives. But you should know a few things. You should know what fascinates you. You should know what gives you passion. And you should know a general direction of where that kind of career might take you, and what your interest is. And I don't think these decisions should be carved in stone at this point in your life, but they should be sort of tentative directions. And I think you should always be talking with people and reading and doing research that either confirms or changes those plans, especially now in the next couple of years. But graduate school, even applying to graduate school and certainly going through graduate school and earning a graduate degree, it's a huge investment of time and resources and effort and money. So it isn't the place to find yourself. It's the place to go when you have a general direction of what you want, both because you don't want to waste effort and money, and resources. It's not just the money you might pay in tuition if you're going to a master's program, but it's the income you don't earn while you're in graduate school, that opportunity cost. And I obviously believe it's well worth it. I help people succeed in graduate school every day. I did it myself, but you have to make sure you're using it in the right way and that you know what you want to use it for. Make sense? I'm trying to see, do I have a chat box while I'm sharing? I'm not sure I can see the chat box right now. So if you have a question, feel free to stop me and just blurt it out. Or Kristen, maybe you can monitor the chat for me and let me know if something comes up. But this is the first thing, know your general path. And how do you know your general path? It's really through a lot of networking. So before you even network with these people that I have listed on the slide, if you think you're interested in a certain career path, I would strongly encourage you to find people out there who are doing that career path and reach out to them and set up conversations with them, set up informational interviews. So for example, if I think that I want to be a social worker, I think someone said MS in social work, when I asked what programs you're interested in, you need to find someone in the area of social work that you think is most interesting to you and ask them if they'll talk with you for a few minutes. Find them on LinkedIn. You can find them sometimes through the alumni network. You can find them at events that your department might set up. You can ask your professors if they can refer you to someone. Really look through your network and find a couple people doing that and ask them about it, and ask them, what is your average day like? What do you love most about your job? What's most challenging about your job? Here's the key question that you should ask everyone in life anytime you have the chance. What do you wish you had known when you were in my shoes? That's a winning question. You'll hear everyone's regrets and you won't make the mistakes that they made. So do a lot to shore up your idea of what your path is and keep doing it, because you're going to change your mind over time. When I was in MBA admissions, there was, as part of the admissions process, there was a short essay where applicants would explain what their desired career path was. And I used to joke with people that if essay 2 was a contractual obligation, I'd be suing all of you, because they almost always changed their minds once they got admitted and their world opened up and they saw all the possibilities. Some fields are more appropriate for that than others, but the point is your interest can always change. So always be confirming or changing, and always be researching and reflecting as well. Once you feel pretty confident that you know your career path, at least a general enough idea of it that you can figure out what kind of graduate program would support you in this endeavor, it's time to network more specifically with people at the schools that you might be interested in attending. And who you network with is going to be a function of the kind of program that you're applying for. So if you're looking to earn a PhD, and I saw some of you answered that in the chat, then it's faculty you should network with. You should find faculty who are doing the kind of research that you're interested in doing. You should read their articles, skim them, or their books, and become familiar with their work. And then you should reach out to them, either at a conference that you might attend, if you are attending research conferences, or just by email. And you want to think of some kind of intelligent question to ask based on your reading of their work, and introduce yourself and say, I'm Jill Huerta. I'm really interested in studying the kind of chemical reactions that you wrote about in this article. I found your article fascinating. I have a couple questions, and begin a conversation. And you don't have to immediately say, I'm interested in attending your program, right? Open the conversation up. Ask the intelligent questions about their writing. And then when they respond, then continue the conversation, So as the conversation moves forward and you email back and forth, you can express your interest. Now, the faculty member won't always answer your email, and that's okay, right? You're always putting out opportunities to network, and not everyone is going to take the bait and email you back and have a conversation. Don't worry about that. You can follow up on that email. You can follow up a week later. I'd give them plenty of time, a week or 10 days, because you're going to start this well in advance, and then send another email. Just following up on my last email, wondering if you've had a chance to take a look. And you're doing this with multiple people. So you don't need every single person to answer. It's okay if some people don't answer. But if it's someone you're most interested in working with, you might want to persist a little and keep trying to do that. Does that make sense? Any questions? Let me pause for any questions. If you are applying for a master's program, it depends on what kind of master's program it is. If it's a master's research program, you could do the same kind of process and reach out to faculty. But if it's more of a professional master's program, like an MBA or like a master's in public health administration, etc., then it's probably less common to reach out to faculty, though still something that you can do. But either way, you should reach out to admissions representatives at those schools and introduce yourself and find an intelligent question to ask. And I guarantee that if you look at any school's application for admission, you have questions, right? But what happens is applicants are extremely hesitant to ask those questions because they think, I should know the answer. I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to, look like I couldn't figure it out. And as someone who has sat on the other side of the desk, I can't stress enough how valuable it can be to reach out to the admissions representative. They're usually happy to talk with you, right? That's what they do. They're people. They like to have conversations. And when you're on the other side of the desk and you're trying to recruit the most talented, most interesting, most competitive cohort of graduate students you can, it's a great opportunity to talk with someone, right? It's a data point. So really encourage you to do this. Just don't ask a question that you could have easily found the answer to by reviewing the school's website, right? Ask a more sophisticated question that isn't wasting the person's time. But usually they'll be happy to answer all kinds of questions like, could you clarify exactly what you're looking for in this essay question? I think my understanding is that you'd like to know A, B, C. Is that correct? Are there preferences beyond that? Things like that. And they'll often give you all kinds of helpful hints about things to include in your essays and things to include in your application that will be helpful. So don't miss that opportunity. You can also reach out to graduate program directors. They might have a different title at different schools. Here at UNC Charlotte, we call them graduate program directors, and they also are very interested in recruiting a talented class. So they will usually be happy to interact with you. And then current students, that's a great opportunity to reach out to someone and ask them a whole slew of things that you wouldn't want to ask faculty or the admissions representative, including that winning question that I talked about a few minutes ago. What do you wish you had known when you were at my point in the process? Sometimes they'll tell you, I wish I had known not to come here because my experience has been terrible. And that's very valuable input, right? Do keep in mind that everyone you talk to at an institution, you should consider that part of your application process. You should not have any conversation that you wouldn't be happy for them to relay to an admissions representative, because often that happens. That happened in my program that I worked in, right? I would talk with students who had interacted with applicants. And if they saw a red flag, if they saw some kind of warning of a problem with that person, they would often come to me. Some schools have forms they can fill out. So whenever you're interacting with anyone at an institution you're applying for, consider it part of the admissions process. All right, but current students, it's a great idea. It's a great idea. The application process, once you choose your set of schools that you're going to apply for, it's a great idea to make a spreadsheet and put each school on the spreadsheet, put the various components of the application that they require, and list the due dates there. And then have some system to check it off once you do it. Maybe you highlight that cell of the spreadsheet a certain color. Yes, send transcripts to this school. Submitted information about my letters of rec, etc. But stay organized, because it would be a shame if you didn't meet the application deadline because you forgot some piece, because it just slipped your mind. So have a good system for making sure you remember everything. And pay attention to those deadlines and the requirements, because sometimes there are little requirements that differ for each school. And even if they wouldn't kick back your application and refuse to look at it, you look more impressive if you get everything just right the first time. Recommendations or letters of rec or references. Often now when you're having someone be a recommender for you, you just input their information into the application and then they're sent a link. This is a really interesting part of the application process because many people think this is the part I don't have control over. I just have to ask the right person, and then what they do, they do. I don't see it, it gets submitted directly. But I would argue you have a lot more control over that process than you think you do. And that control starts now, especially for those of you who are sophomores or juniors. You should be cultivating relationships with people for a variety of reasons, not just because you might want to ask for a letter of recommendation one day, but you should be cultivating relationships. If you have a professor that you really liked and you were really interested in the class and you think one day you may ask them to be your recommender, keep that relationship up. Don't just finish the class and then not talk to them for 2 years, right? And then go back your senior year and say, remember me, I was in your class and I would love for you to write a letter of rec. Stay in touch with people like that, find things to talk about or to email about, and continue to network with that person. And remember that networking is a two-way street. So even though that person may be a faculty member and you're a student, it doesn't mean you don't come across information that might be useful for them, at one point or another, especially if you're looking at programs at other schools. So share information, be in touch regularly, at least a couple of times a semester until you're ready to ask for that letter of recommendation. And the way you ask for it is important. Because you have to make sure that the relationship is what you think it is. As an admissions representative, it used to blow my mind that this happened, but sometimes I get a letter of rec and think, I don't think this recommender was a huge fan of this student. They're not saying awesome things about this student. They don't seem to be on their team. And that's a problem. Because as the person evaluating the application, I'm thinking, what went wrong there? Did the student miscalculate that relationship so badly? Did they not understand their surroundings that they asked someone who didn't really think highly of them to write a letter of rec? So when you approach someone, you need to ask this question. Hopefully you filled them in. Part of asking for advice on your plans, and you can approach them and say, yes, I've made the decision to apply to grad school. I'm applying to the following programs. I'd love for you to be my recommender. Do you feel that you can write a stellar recommendation for me? You might as well ask that question. You might as well confirm that now and make sure you get a great recommendation from that person. And once they say yes, which I think they usually do, because most of us understand our relationships, it doesn't end there, right? You want to make it easy for this person. So you want to talk about what your goals are in your application, right? Like I'm thinking my biggest weakness in this application process might be, I'll make something up, my quantitative skills. So in my essays, in my application, I'm looking to demonstrate the strength of my quantitative skills. I'm also portraying myself as highly collaborative and highly dedicated. And I explained in my application how I became so interested and fascinated with chemistry. So just giving that little synopsis can be very helpful. You should also send them a copy of your CV or resume because they don't remember everything you've done, right? They see students all the time. So that gives them something to work with, and you should let them know that path that you are crafting, where you think you're going to go with your career, and how a graduate degree is going to help you get there. Make sense? Any questions out there? But the takeaway is you have a lot more control of the recommendation process than you think. Just by providing those materials, you're giving them something to talk about. It should never go beyond that, by the way. Even if the person you ask says, I'd love to do it, I'm so busy, but could you write it up and give it to me and I'll just send it in? No, the answer is no. Not only that is that unethical, even if they ask you to do it, it's unethical, but it can cause your admission to be rescinded, right? If it's found out that you did that. So found out that you misrepresented anything on your application. So don't let it go that far, but do give them the materials to make it easy for them to be a huge fan of you. The personal statement. This is something that I find students just agonize over and spend hours and hours and pull their hair out and try to figure out what to say in the personal statement. And I have just a few bits of advice for that. The first one is really carefully review the prompt and make sure that you are answering exactly what they asked you to answer. And if you have a personal statement that you wrote for another school and it's kind of close to what they're asking, but not exactly, don't use that one. You can tailor that one. You can start with that one, and then you can make appropriate changes so that you're directly answering exactly what they've asked you to talk about. But don't say, oh, I think it's close enough, I'm just going to upload this essay and it'll work. You want to make sure you're responsive. It's a very bad feeling when someone isn't responsive to you, right? Like if I say, hey, how do you like the light gray jacket that I'm wearing today, right? If I say that and you say, oh, I love black blazers. That is so unsatisfying for me, right? I'm kind of like, we are not connecting. Did you hear my question? Did you see me? And you certainly don't want to give that impression to a school that you're applying to. If you put yourself in their shoes, they would like to admit people who are very eager to attend their institution and who will say yes to the offer. So if you're non-responsive, it's an early signal that you don't care that much about getting into that institution, that it might be your safe school, or that you're just not that passionate about grad school, or that you don't care that much and you don't want to give someone that impression. So tip one, make sure it's responsive and it answers the question. And to ensure that, after you write it, I recommend giving it to a family member, a friend, a mentor to read, and let them figure out the question based on your answer. That's a great way to do it. Also, you don't want to spend 3 months writing it, right? It's not that arduous of a task, but you do want to be conscientious. So you want to have someone proofread it. You want to make sure you didn't put the wrong school name in there, which is something that does happen. Like if you apply to UNC Charlotte and you say, I am so convinced that UNC Chapel Hill is the perfect place for me to pursue my graduate studies, it's not going to keep you from getting in. I can tell you that from experience, but it doesn't bode well, right? It doesn't make you look like a conscientious professional. So be sure to look at the details, make sure the grammar is right, make sure the spelling is right, make sure your sentences are clear. That's where having sort of an educated proofreader can help you. And make sure it isn't overly scripted / dramatic / artificial, right? So when I was reading essays from MBA students, If I got one that said, ever since I was 2 years old, I started reading the Wall Street Journal, and I knew that I was destined to be the chief financial officer of, a Fortune 500 company. That is overly dramatic. That is telling me what you think I want to hear. It's inauthentic and it doesn't play well. So I really encourage you to tell your authentic story. That's what people are good at, right? If I ask you to kind of come up with an artificial letter of interest that isn't really how you feel, you're not going to be as effective at that as if you tell your story. And I think if there's room for it in the way they ask the question, explaining how you got extremely interested in the field you're interested in is a winning thing to include. We all love people's stories. We love stories in general. So I would do this depending on the question asked, and either in written or verbal form. When people would ask me about my interest, I would say, well, as an undergraduate student at the University of Michigan, I studied econ, and I loved econ. It was very, very interesting to me, but I found that with econ, the analysis stopped just when the problem was getting most interesting. I would find a number to represent some economic trend, but it didn't tell me what are the effects of this trend. How does it affect communities of people? How does it affect business strategy? How does it affect governmental economic strategy? That's what I was most interested in. So I went on to study US business history in my graduate studies. So that would be an example of telling your authentic story of how you got interested. You might have to do it a little quicker if you don't get very many words in the essay, but you get the idea. And if they ask for things like your challenges or your weaknesses, you want to give a real one, right? You don't want to give the standard, I work too much. That's my weakness, because it's also probably not authentic unless that really is your authentic challenge. Now, let me temper all of what I just said by saying two things. Don't give TMI, right? Don't give too much personal information that might not be appropriate to share in a professional context. Where that line is can be hard to grasp, right? Like if you have had a huge health concern throughout your undergraduate years that has been a challenge, you can probably refer to it, right? You can say, I experienced this particular health challenge that has made my time here more difficult. And it's one thing to do that, and it's another thing to sort of describe every symptom you have, for example. So that's something to keep in mind. Keep it professional while sharing your authentic self. And sometimes you're going to need to bounce that off someone, right? Where that line is, where you might want to share something that is personal in nature, like a health concern or an experience you've had, but not go too far into the personal. And the other thing is, if you're going to talk about a weakness, don't go too far, right? Don't really give them a horrible weakness that would make them not want to admit you. Choose a mild weakness. We all have flaws. And if someone asked me to describe one of my flaws, I have choices. I have more than one. So let's pick something that's not too horrible, right? So that you don't turn them off to admitting you altogether. Finally, in the essay section, some institutions ask, is there any sort of circumstance that affected your academic performance that you'd like to share with us? And, here's where I encourage you to take this opportunity if you have some blips on your academic performance, right? If you have a couple of really bad semesters, and there's a reason, like you were having financial problems, you were struggling with a health concern. You had some experience that threw your life into turmoil for a while. I would encourage you to use that opportunity to discuss it. I think sometimes people feel like, oh, they may not even notice, that downturn in my grades. They're probably going to notice. So it's a good idea to explain it. And what you explain is probably going to be more favorable than what someone might assume, like that you just partied for a year and weren't very serious or dedicated. So I'd encourage you to do that if you really have some negative performance to explain. Now, if you are sort of a 4.0 student, but there was one semester when you got a B or two, no, don't do that, because that isn't a true, academic problem that you had. That's just like slightly lower performance for one semester. And they might not notice that, right? If you have a high GPA overall. But if there really is a downturn, I would encourage you to explain it. Let's see. Seems like oh, I guess that's just my last slide. There are other places I could go with this, depending on what your interests are. Sometimes when I talk to this group, I talk about PhD funding. But maybe I'll just open it up to your questions so that I can spend time on the thing most relevant to you.
We did have a question in the chat from Catalina. Catalina, do you want to ask a question?
Oh yeah, hey, sorry. I was just wondering, on the thing that you last went over about, they give a section like, is there anything like any circumstances that you want to explain or anything? If there's nothing like to explain, do you just leave it blank, or is it wise to put something there?
I just leave it blank if you have nothing to explain. Let me give you a little empathy to work with here that will help you as you're as you're going through the process. When I was recruiting and admitting for the University of Michigan, right? Recruiting was great. I traveled all over the world, meeting students and recruiting them for our program. So that was fun. Reading applications, not as fun. It's really fun for the first few, right? But I was spending like 12 to 14 hours a day reading applications, and reading essays, is the longest part of reading applications. And I'll give you the not pretty picture. I worked remotely when I did this. It was me, 12 to 14 hours at my desk at home in my yoga pants with my giant cup of coffee, talking to my dog because I'm so lonely, right? And just trying to get through a few more. So if you think of someone doing that, and some of the programs you apply for, that will be the case. Other programs, not so many applicants apply, like PhD programs. But nothing would irritate me more than people writing something I didn't need to see or read, right? Because I was very dedicated that I was going to read every word that people submitted. But if you are now wasting my time, that becomes annoying. So don't write things you don't need to write. Now do take opportunities if you need to. And that'll give you some insight too on why it's important to be responsive and authentic, because I could be wading through lots and lots of essays and not really enjoying them. And then there's one that would be really authentic and really compelling. And I'd be like, oh, that was so satisfying to read that. That was this person really shared something interesting and I got some insight into them, and that was really wonderful. And that would make, that would put me in a good mood for another few applications. Does that answer your question? So the next one, does major GPA count over cumulative GPA? I can't answer that because you're applying to so many different programs. And my answer to that is reach out to the admissions representative. It's a great time to network. Well, first, make sure that question isn't answered on the website. But if it isn't, reach out and ask how do you calculate GPA? What do you look at when you say your average GPA is this? What does that mean? All of that kind of specific information, reach out to the program. And even multiple schools that you apply to, even if it's the same program, may do it differently. If we are interested in completing a PhD at a certain point, is it advised to reach out to faculty to ask for research opportunities as an undergrad? I guess I'm asking if people do that or not. Yes, absolutely. I think many labs have an undergraduate working in them. Don't some of you do this kind of work? Or Kristen, don't some of the members of this program do that or no?
Do undergraduate research? Yes, so everyone here is doing undergraduate research within Florida university, or with the professor or faculty at the university right now.
Yeah, so you guys are awesome. You've already started that. But yes, talk with faculty members. And if the research you're doing now, if you don't feel like it's as directly relevant to the plan that you're putting together, yes, when you're finished with this experience, you could reach out to another faculty member. I guess that's Jay. Jay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I was specifically asking, like, if I wanted to do like a PhD at a certain program at another institution, is it advised to do that? Even though, like, I'm at Charlotte right now, but let's say I wanted to do a Chapel Hill PhD for whatever reason, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That's probably difficult for them to set up research opportunities unless you can sort of find a way to suggest the lab you're in could collaborate. I would ask this question to your current research advisor and see what they say, because it probably depends, and it depends on the research area. Sometimes there are copyright issue or patent issues, for example, and the faculty may only want students from their institution working on that research because they have signed certain agreements and things like that. So if there's a formal program set up to bring in other collaborators, maybe, but your advisor, I think, could best help you navigate that kind of issue.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. Is there an office here on campus or someone who we can make an appointment with to meet and speak with one-on-one about grad school, specifically here at UNCC? Yes, is the answer to that. So we have an admissions department, graduate admissions. I'm gonna chat their website, and there is a contact us button or, option that you can use. There's sort of apply now, request information, view events. You can also walk right into the graduate school, which is in Reese. They've moved to Reese now, or you can come into the Center for Graduate Life and Learning where I am. You can make an appointment to talk with me about it, and then I can send you to various people. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and I am in 149 Atkins, directly across from the Career Center. And the Career Center is another great resource. I think they run some programs on applying to graduate school, and I think they have counselors that you can talk with about your plans for graduate school. If you're not using the Career Center, you're missing a great opportunity. They will do resume reviews. They will do mock interviews with you. They'll help you navigate internships. Do most of you use the Career Center as students? Little bit. If you're not, you really should. You're paying for it. It's part of the tuition and fees that you pay covers that service, and it is so helpful. They even take headshots for free so that you can have a professional photo for your LinkedIn. Actually, they have a really new fancy machine where you can take your own photo and you can manipulate the photo and put filters on it and make yourself look really awesome. And it's kind of fun to play with. So you should stop in, play with that, get a great photo of yourself, and make an appointment with a counselor in the area that you're interested in. But yes, use your resources. And then you can also reach out right to the program that you're interested in applying to the graduate program director. And those are listed on the graduate admissions site. And if you have trouble finding out who that is, just email me and I'll help you. That made me think, oh, I don't know if any of you have considered early entry programs. I saw someone put early entry on there when I asked the question on the chat. That's a great idea. It saves time and saves money. So where there are early entry plans in your fields of interest, I would strongly encourage you to think about that. Did I get all the questions? What else? What other questions do you have? You could also just unmute and ask it too. We don't have to be so formal. I would say the conversation doesn't have to stop here. I'm a resource for you. You know, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and email me, stop by my office and say hi, make an appointment, any of those options. And again, remember the resources. You can get help from the Career Center. You can certainly get help from graduate admissions. They do information sessions all the time. Oh, that reminds me of two things. One, attend information sessions. Institutions track the people who attend information sessions. I mean, first of all, attend because you'll get information. But secondly, it's a way to show interest. And remember what I said, they're looking to admit people who want to accept the offer. So sign up, register for those info sessions and attend, okay? Honor your commitments. When you register for things, be sure that you go through with it and attend. And if you absolutely can't at the last minute for some reason, make sure you reach out and let them know and cancel your registration, because institutions use CRMs, sophisticated systems that track every interaction. Sorry about that. Every interaction you have. And this is good advice in general in your educational and professional careers. Honor your commitments. Show up for the things you say you're going to show up for. Do it, be dressed appropriately. That doesn't mean you're wearing a full suit, right? But wear a nice casual, neat. I call it smart casual as this form of dress where maybe you have jeans on, but you have a nice sweater or button-down shirt, you know, something that looks like you put some thought into what you wore that day. But the other thing is standardized tests that I meant to talk about. And these are optional at some institutions now, so you have to look closely at the requirements. But if they're going to be required for any of the programs you apply for, I recommend you take that standardized test right as you're graduating, like the GRE or the GMAT or the LSAT, the MCAT, whatever it is. Take it during your senior year. And this is why you are the smartest you're ever going to be for that kind of test right now. as you're finishing up your undergrad degree. And if you wait, if you say you're going to work a couple of years and then apply to grad school, you are going to have to work to get back to where you are now. So if you're going to need a standardized test, take care of it. And if it matters, maybe you should think about taking it more than once, because statistically, people tend to do better the second time, right? You know what to expect, you're more comfortable, you know how to budget your time better. So wanted to get those 2 tips in there. Anything else? Well, it was great to spend some time sort of with you all. I won't lie, I like a face-to-face connection a little better, where I can see the teacher in me likes to see the nods, but I know this is a very convenient way to do it. So thank you for inviting me, and please let me know